Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Okay, open public hearing. Topic, annexation of 60110 and 60120 Barrack Lane. I'm going to turn it over to our city planner, Jacob Gretchen.
Thank you, Mayor Scholl.
Mm-hmm.
This is a legislative land use hearing. The subject of the hearing is an annexation and the zoning and comprehensive plan determination of that. Because legislative proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, the council must take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. So first, does any member of the council wish to declare a conflict of interest or bias in this matter? I don't see any. Does anyone from the audience want to object to the ability of a counselor to make a fair decision? I don't see any. Okay, good. So the rules for the conduct of the hearing are set forth on the handout on the table over there. But generally, the order of the proceedings will be as follows. Required statements, which I'm doing right now. The staff report, which I'll do right after that. Applicant presentation. Those in favor of the application. Those who have neutral testimony. Those opposed. And then rebuttal by the applicant. Close of the hearing, close of the record, deliberations, and finally, decision. The following statements are to be made at the commencement of the hearing. The standards for the decision are as follows. St. Helens Municipal Code 17.20.120 sub 1, standards for legislative decision. And then 17.08.060 regarding the transportation planning rule. 17.28030 annexation criteria. And finally, 17.112020 established and developed area classification. Very exciting. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable standards as listed or other criteria which you feel apply to this case. So enough with the statements. Let's talk about what we have going on here. So this is an annexation of property. And generally, there's two reasons we see annexations. Typically, either they're connecting to a city utility, which is the most common, or they want to use the city's development standards. And in this case, it's for our standards. This is a 6.64 acre property. It's currently accessed by Barrack Lane, which is kind of a private driveway off a Hankey Road. Each parcel is developed with a detached single-family dwelling. The property is bordered on the east by Weyerhaeuser property, which is zoned primary forest, which is actually kind of strange because it's in the urban growth boundary. You wouldn't normally see resource land within the UGB. And then the other three borders of the property are zoned the city's moderate residential R7. This is a matter that went before the Planning Commission for recommendation, and the Planning Commission recommended approval and that the property be zoned R7. And really, the zoning is one of the big questions that are before the council here tonight. So a lot of times with annexations, they're really simple. Like the last one we had, the comprehensive plan identified it as heavy industrial, and there's one zoning option, so you can do it in your sleep. I don't think you should sleep on this one. There's a little more to think about. So one of the things we have to think about is if this is a spot zoning. And our code defines that as rezoning of a lot or parcel of land to benefit an owner for use incompatible with surrounding uses and not for the purpose of affecting or furthering the comprehensive plan. So there's an argument of, is the zoning that you choose compatible with the area? So that's one side. And this is something that the Planning Commission chewed on at their meeting. And what they found was that they recommended the R7 zone because that wouldn't constitute a spot zone. They felt that any other zoning would be incompatible because they felt the property was too small to warrant a different zoning than districts surrounding it, and that there is R7 zoning on multiple sides and no other contiguous zoning districts. So that's how the Planning Commission felt. And that's what you get to decide. So let's talk about zoning. This property has a comprehensive plan designation of what we call rural, suburban, unincorporated residential. And in that designation, there are basically 4 options for zoning. And sometimes there's only 2, sometimes there's 1. In this case, there's 4. So normally, it could be zoned R7 or R10, which are lower density standards, mostly orientated towards the classic detached single-family dwelling lot. But our comprehensive plan also says that you can consider zoning lands with this comprehensive plan designation, either the R5 category or the AR, which is apartment residential category, which are the higher density residential zoning districts that we have. If the parcels are vacant, larger than 2 acres in size, the carrying capacity of public services are okay.
Excuse me, could you repeat that whole sentence again, please?
The parcel is vacant and larger than 2 acres in size.
No, I meant the previous one about the zoning.
4 different.
After the R7 and R10? Okay. So consider zoning lands with this designation as R5 or AR. And I should note that the applicant is requesting R5, and that's an important thing. So there's the size requirement, there's a carrying capacity element of public services. So basically your streets and utilities can accommodate the higher density, and that basically your R10 and R7 is handled elsewhere. And so what you're going to see tonight is an argument that R5 meets the intent of our comprehensive plan policies, and that's what the applicant is going to present. And I'm sure there are some arguments out here about compatibility, at least based on some of the testimony we had from the neighborhood in the Planning Commission meeting, which wasn't nearly as well attended as this one. So, yeah, we met our legal requirements for. Thank you.
What are the legal requirements? Yeah, what are they? Because it was only posted once in the Chronicle.
Yeah, we're required to post it in the paper, and there's a statutory time for that, and then we're required to send to property owners, I think, within 300 feet of the property. Yeah, 300 feet. It should have listed both. Yeah, it should have. Usually it does.
It was back in April.
Yeah.
It was quite a while ago, and it was the online version.
And the mail out is as good as the assessor records because that's what we use.
You use the same mailing company or the same
Yeah, USPS.
process. Yep. For taxes.
That's the law.
There are some other things, so the comprehensive plan designation, suburban residential, that's pretty much an automatic. And then there's a designation as developing or established, which just affects density a little bit. It's this thing in law that I haven't seen much purpose of it, but it's in the code. But the big thing is, what is it going to be zoned? And so on the scale of density, you have R10, R7, R5, AR. The Planning Commission recommends R7. The applicant desires R5, and so it's these two in the middle, and that's going to be probably the crux of the debate tonight. And that's the staff report. So that being the case, unless the council has any initial questions of staff, we can open it to the applicant's presentation.
Was there any talk, and can you do this? Can you establish a mixed zoning to where on this parcel, some of it is zone 5, some of it is 7? Can you strike a compromise?
There's nothing that says you can't, as long as it's logical and where you're establishing that zoning pattern.
Thank you.
Applicant, would you like to present?
Zahl, and I'd like to thank the mayor and councilors and everybody else here, and also I'd like to thank all of our neighbors for coming. We did try to go door to door if a lot of people weren't home, but we were only within 300 feet. But I'm really glad that you're here because we're your neighbor. We live there. We want this to be a good program. It's not like we are a developer from outside trying to come in. This is our neighborhood.
Okay, I'm Eric Zahl, and I
Sorry, but we can't hear you back here. Can you like the mic?
Just put it closer to your
Oh,
mouth.
was it not? Is it not on? The mic is on. Go a little closer.
Can you hear me now?
I don't think it's on.
Must not be on.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Eric Zahl, and I also live at 60120 Barrack Lane. Okay, so we have a presentation to make about the whole argument we're making. So can you go to the second slide, please?
Closer.
Oh.
Eric,
Yeah.
there we go.
Okay. How's that?
Yeah.
How's that?
That's good.
Okay, thank you. As Jacob just was reading off about what the city code says, I'm just re-quoting that here. It's the same thing he was just reading off. Consider zoning lands with the rural, suburban, unincorporated residential category for R5 or AR if the following conditions are found. The county and city determine, due to the pattern of development in the city and within the urban growth area, that other lands are more appropriate for these designations. I thought there should be an unless there. That's why I put that. I thought it was reverse logic, but anyway. Another thing from the city code states that the strategy is to ensure that sufficient lands are designated for those different phases and desires of current and future residents, and to encourage policies and decisions to allow all residents the ability to find affordable housing. I know people are probably generally aware that this is getting to be challenging now. Also, some goals are to promote safe, adequate, and affordable housing for all current and future members of the community. So just restating the city's goals there. So I think probably many people are aware that the housing finance crisis masked other large forces for several years, but now the affordability issue is coming back pretty strong. Basically driven by Portland Metro, highly attractive real estate market. Upward price pressure continues to affect St. Helens. Demographically, there's also some pressure that I listed in the full report, but anyway. Pent-up home buying for millennials, baby boomers continuing to retire. There's certain forces at play that are pretty challenging right now for housing affordability that are shaping the market. Market prices for our zip code are rising. This is just some example house in our area. I don't think this is any mystery to anybody. Prices are going up. They're starting to slow down a little bit, which is probably good overall, but still going up. There's been a lot of effort, I guess, made towards addressing this issue in the Columbia County Housing Report. This was spearheaded by a Community Action Team, and it's a 1.5 year long study published in February 2018. You folks are probably all aware of that.
We actually contributed to it.
You contributed to it. Probably many people here contributed to it. Thank you. Professionally researched and prepared report. There's a lot in there, obviously, but I'm not going to go into all of that. But 4 items that I took from that report were, for St. Helens, the predicted number of dwelling units that are projected to be needed for the next 20 years is 2,179. That's 109 units per year to keep up with demand. That's the projection. The idea being if you don't keep up with that, there'll be not enough supply. They also had a primary recommendation of encouraging a new mix of housing types to be built. More multifamily and attached single-family housing units need to be built than in the past, along with smaller, less expensive housing units. Single-family attached is described as having many benefits. In other words, we're talking row houses here, including maintaining a neighborhood character, private entrance, parking, and yard, all while consuming less land and achieving better affordability. And they called out for single-family attached housing being a principal opportunity for R5 and AR zoning as a method to increase affordability. So from our standpoint, we see the benefits of R5 as it allows a mix of single-family detached and attached. Our intention is not to have 100% attached, not even close to it. But to be able to be allowed to do any attached housing, we have to have this zoning. Unless you have a conditional use permit and you can do duplexes, and that's it on R7. Let's see, there's not a lot of urban growth boundary land. It's a limited quantity, why not use it to the best of its ability? Solves the undersupply problem of smaller, more affordable, high quality new construction homes. The thing that it does give you is it's going to give you higher profit margins. It allows you to maybe dedicate some green space for valuable shared aesthetic too. With R7 penciling it out, it's a little harder to figure that out, to dedicate more lots to that. But with R5, you can make it work. So you can have some more common green space. Okay, the next, please. So, I wasn't aware of any studies on what assessment of available buildable lands. I know Scappoose has got a study going right now where they're looking at that. Jacob told me he wasn't aware of any that were available right now. I, on my own, just to try to look at this point, tried my own mini analysis of looking at what R5 do you really have available that's readily buildable? I did this, not professionally, by looking at the zoning map and looking at Google Satellite and just knowing what I know about neighborhoods. And what I was able to come up with was the areas in the green, in the dark blue. It's kind of hard to see. One includes Emerald Meadows, which is, zoned R7 on this map, but was changed to R5 recently and is now being developed. I made a mistake on this first presentation in the Planning Commission because I was looking at the comprehensive map rather than the zoning map. So the little section down near behind the high school, the blue circle around behind the high school was actually zoned AR. This is not the zoning map, it's the comprehensive plan map. Anyway, I kind of came up with about 24 acres of what looks like readily developable land. One already is being developed, so that's already in progress, Emerald Meadows. That's good. But I just trying to, show like how much of this R5 do we really have that's readily buildable. And I'm not claiming to be an expert on this, but I think it is something that's important whenever a decision like this is made, is where are you going to get the R5? Okay, next slide, please. This is just the zoning map that I should have used the first time. Shows all the details of the zone. Okay. In the Planning Commission hearing, I'll just be frank, it was a little disappointing to me because I wanted to know about all the stuff going on in the city, and I thought that would come up as maybe counter arguments to what we're saying, like, hey, we're already doing this, we don't need that as R5. But that didn't come up in the Planning Commission. So with Jennifer's help at this city planning, I got this information from her about, hey, what's really going on right now? And the table at the top is from her. So a lot is going on. And I re-summarized it in the table with the bigger print down below. And so you have the effective zoning of AR of 230 units because of a huge project that's in process. So that's really good. That's a rental property, I assume, AR. Then you have R5. There's two projects. One is 10 unit, what seems like will probably be townhouses, and then the other is a 77 unit, what seems like would be detached housing, the Emerald Meadows. And then on our side, there's a project in the Bailey project in process, and then there's Elk Ridge, which was before 2017, but it's still being built out. That's about 100 more lots, actually, ready, with street infrastructure in. Yes, all R7. So when you look at that, what I want to just show here too is I put some price estimates there of the non-rental property. And just to think a little bit about what a person who doesn't own a home, typically a younger person, but not necessarily, what they have to be able to afford that home. So 0% down, 4.6% interest rates are going up right now. For the R5 kind of property, I put in there 230K to 310K. You need about 64 to 86K a year to be able to afford that for somebody who doesn't have any equity. If you can do a 10% down, which is maybe not too common, you get some help from parents or maybe you've been saving a few years, it gets a little better. R7 now, it's in a little bit of limbo because stuff is slowing down on selling. I think there is some pushback coming that people are charging a lot, and there's some pushback coming back from the market now, I think. But I know in Elk Ridge they're listing at 380, and they're not getting it. So maybe that's coming down. But they're listing at 380 now for R7 property, 2,100 square foot houses. I mean, that's incredible for St. Helens. So if you want to buy that in that range, you need 91 to 107K. Just, I just want people to have that sink in, what that means. Okay, so 435 units in process now. I mean, that's actually pretty good. So I was glad to see that. I didn't get that from the Planning Commission meeting. Okay, next slide. This, I don't know how accurate this is. I got this from the city data. You guys might have some more accurate data. But this is an income household distribution of income in St. Helens. Thinking of, anything below 60K, if you don't already have home equity, you're looking at rental property. So everything below 60K, which is 60% of the population, is rental property if you don't already have home equity. Everything above that can be home ownership. Okay, next slide. So I was just trying to kind of summarize what I got out of looking at what's going on and the income reality of our city. So there are many projects in the works, so that's doing pretty good. Now, is it enough, and is it at the right mix? So assuming you get all 435 units built, that these projects all come to fruition, you've got about a 4-year supply at 109 units per year. That's pretty good, really. 230 rental apartments, that's 53% of it. That's pretty good, and it needed a lot of help there, and that's doing well. 87 smaller detached, R5, 111 large detached. So that all looks pretty good. But what I want to show, like down below, I'm looking at compare that to the income. Less than 60K is 60% of our households. That's the rentals stuff that's going on. That's, as I show in the red there, that's pretty much wholly dependent on a 206 unit project. Assuming that comes through, that's really good. If that doesn't come through, you know, we're in pretty bad shape for rentals. If for the R5, again, at the moment, it's looking, you know, okay. It's a little bit less than I think it should be, but again, it's wholly dependent on one project that's in the works right now, Emerald Metals, 77 units. If you didn't get that one, it'd be in really bad shape. R7 is kind of overrepresented. 15% of the households in what I consider the range of people buying R7 properties. 27% of what we have in process is R7. So you got 27% of the houses being built for 15% of the people. Not quite a good match there. And again, that right now, that's wholly dependent on the Elk Ridge. There's not a lot of R7, so you could say that, you know, maybe we need R7, but it depends on Elk Ridge coming through. I don't know. I know it's slow there, so I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to say this might seem counterproductive because, like, hey, I'm not really trying to push my point. It's like I wanted kind of a fair analysis. I hope that would come out in the Planning Commission. It really didn't for me. I wanted to present that. So there's good progress. I feel so. Thank you. I know many of you probably had something to do with that. But we need to keep this up for years to come. If all the projects in progress right now are realized, you know, we should be getting some good improvement over the next several years of affordability, at least not getting worse. But the main progress is highly dependent on two projects. The Emerald Meadows and whether this McBride-Matson multifamily comes through. Both of these projects, as I understand it, required special effort by the developers in the city to get zoning use changes. So correct housing to meet the market needs could be met. Existing zoning wasn't ideal. I don't know if that's a fair assessment, but it seems like I know there was. I'm not so familiar with the 206 unit. I know there was a conditional use permit for it. I'm not sure how hard that was to work out. I know on the Emerald Meadows it went through a couple of trials. The developer had to keep pushing. They finally got the R5. So without those projects, we'd be in pretty bad shape. The availability of urban growth boundary is mostly on the western outskirts of the city, farther from the city center, and may require passing through a lot of R7 space to get to Highway 30 and the city center. So we ask, is it clear where we are going to get the much needed R5 development in the future? That's one thing I just, hoping you guys wrestle with. Because we're saying, like, hey, maybe you need to look harder at where the R5 is going to come from. Okay, next slide, please. What did I put this here for? Oh, that's just showing, well, you guys know, the urban growth boundary is the green dot, the green dotted line going around the edge of the city. It's most of the available lands to the west and the south. We are kind of in the north, and there's that big forest land behind us, which, could be R5 or something like that, denser. If so, then we're kind of right in the middle of that. And that's closer to the city center and closer to Highway 30. Maybe an appropriate place to put denser housing. Okay, so avoiding the hotspot zoning question that Jacob was stating. So again, there's this large block of the rural unincorporated land just behind us, denoted here with the pink boundary. And part or all of this property could be considered for R5 zoning when it's annexed into the city. If so, then the Zahl property doesn't represent a hotspot, but more the beginning of a trend of more R5 or more denser designations when that land is annexed into the city. Mm.
We can't have comment from, you'll get your turn. You have to come up to the mic, so this is a public hearing. For the record, clarification, that is owned by Weyerhaeuser.
Okay, next slide. So, we believe a good win-win design exists that could satisfy all these stakeholders. Middle-income new buyers with affordability constraints, existing neighbors living in adjacent subdivisions with concerns to preserve their neighborhood quality and property values, the city planning for future growth with a challenging need to have an average of 109 housing units being built per year for the foreseeable future with limited land availability, and a developer and builder producing market rate housing. Okay, so our plan is basically to rely on design. So a master planned neighborhood, smaller houses, every house designed for the lot, attention to opening up space and light between homes, a neighborhood park. I understand the city's not able to accommodate that right now, so it would have to be an HOA park. Or at least that's what I was informed was probably the case. Traditional architecture, color, mix of house sizes, mix of single-family detached and attached houses. We're like looking at hopefully something like 75% detached, 25% attached. And the median home size being smaller and more affordable. Okay, next slide. So I'll just say.
Well, you'll get your chance. Yep. Everybody will get their chance.
So I spent a lot of time with an architectural program, designing these houses, getting the terrain, getting the backdrop, plopping it in, because I wanted to know whether this was really going to work. So I convinced myself that it could work, but there are different viewpoints, I'm sure. What you see here is a style that's kind of more reminiscent of early 1900s. Do you see the garage in the back there to the right of the red house, the kind of rest red house? So this was something that was done in the past. It does make for a significantly smaller backyard. So that's the price. You're catering to people that aren't into the big backyard. Having larger houses on the transition. This is kind of showing like at the boundary to the neighborhood to the south of us. Having a larger, like that 2.5 story there with a garage you see detached again to the right. Opening up a lot of space between the houses with this design concept. You can see in the center there. Okay, so this is kind of the concept plan for the roads. Of course, this, it's hard to say until engineering gets involved, but this would be the concept plan for the roads, connecting the neighborhood Elk Ridge from the north to the top, and Sunset Heights to the south on the bottom. And notice in the middle there's this, park, HOA park, trying to preserve the big fir trees that we have on the property. Those are, 100-plus-year-old trees. Okay, so I know there's this concern, bring down the value of your neighborhood because we're trying to propose something that's a little bit more affordable. And this is just from, Google Street View. Okay, so here's, just going down the street in Sunset Heights to the south of us. There's a little more space between the houses, and there's a little more space, but, okay, next slide, please. I mean, I don't really think so. Because what I'm trying to do is, we're going to be the builders. Now, I know you can't count on that, but that's our intention. That's what we're planning for. So, we're talking about designing these houses, adding character, a park, that public green space of the park. We think that by good design, you can achieve a lot more. I think that the houses that we're trying to design, we're trying to really put a lot of character into them. And this is what we think we can achieve. So how do we think this can be more affordable and still have high value and appealing? Basically, it comes down to having a mix of home sizes and the sizes being smaller on average. More houses to sell for the same infrastructure costs. That's what we get with R5. We have to put the same several hundreds of thousands of dollars into infrastructure development. We get more houses out of that. And also one thing I just add, the architectural services are a labor of love by me. We have the tools, the know-how, and the desire. So homeowners and neighbors are getting on the cheap what distinguishes a high-value neighborhood from a lower-value one: attention to home design and a master plan for the neighborhood. Our plan is not to sell lots to builders. We design it, we build it, our own crew plus subcontracting. It's not cost effective for a homeowner to change the placement and exterior of a house after it's built. So doing this nicely but very cost effectively with no option to downgrade guarantees aesthetic value of a neighborhood at a lower price. And then also to offer basic interior finishes. You can spend a lot of money on the interior of a house. Offer basic interior finishes, allowing buyers to afford a house now and upgrade on their own later as they can afford it. Smaller backyards, but high curb appeal will be kept. These are not for houses, people wanting large yards. Okay, next slide. So the conclusion is that there's rapidly rising home prices in St. Helens, driven by even higher prices in the Portland real estate market. They've already created this problem of affordability. You have demographic forces that are at play. Indicates that lower priced housing, particularly new construction, will continue to be undersupplied. As long as these forces exist, the affordability of housing will be inescapably challenging. So this is the main point that I want to make, is that when new land is annexed into St. Helens, such as our property, there's a critical window of opportunity to move the needle in the right direction to address the affordability problem. You only get one shot at that. When it's annexed, that's it. It's done. So per the code and what Jacob was reading off, the zoning assignment of R5 for the Zahl property does fit what is allowed by code and the comprehensive plan. It's just up to you guys to decide if you think that that's the appropriate place for R5 in the city. We urge you to help us take advantage of this existing provision and step in the right direction and consider the R5 designation as the most appropriate for Zahl property.
Do you have any questions of the applicant before?
I do. Eric?
Yeah.
Why did the Planning Commission, in your eyes, go for R7 over R5?
I didn't hear, there wasn't a chance for a lot of discussion amongst the Planning Commission members, but what I heard were things like, I've been there, no, it should be R7. That was sort of the gist of it. The city engineer recommended R7, I believe they also said, and you probably have some other things in your records, but those are things I remember.
One of the comments is that it should be the same. It should just be the same. The other is that we have a lot of housing in the works already.
Yeah.
Those were the two comments.
That comment was
And
made, and I didn't, but no details were given, and so I've tried to present what I understand are the details that I got from city planning.
I have one other question. How many units in your concept are you thinking about? I don't know if you have I don't know if you have a
It's a
definite plan,
concept.
but your concept, how many units in R5?
Well, if it were all R5, I mean, you were bringing up a good point, it doesn't have to all be R5. If it were all R5, 22 detached and 8 attached.
And in
No, you'll get your turn.
Sorry, go ahead.
okay, say
That's-
that one more time.
That's 8 attached units. So what's allowed by R5 zoning is 4, well, 5 up to 5. So we would do 4 and 4, let's say. 4 and 4. A 4-unit attached row house and a 4-unit attached row house, and then 22 detached.
Okay. And Jacob, how many units could you imagine with R7?
I don't know. We haven't done that analysis. It's not a subdivision.
I bet Eric
proposal.
could tell us. He seems like
Um,
he's already run the numbers.
he's
Um,
an engineer.
If so, one thing you have to look at is whether we lose the park. If we keep the park, which we really want to, it's 20.
Okay.
versus a total of 30 with the park. If we drop the park, then we might get 21 or 22 even, possibly.
And so if you develop the park, does that mean the trees come down?
Yes. There's a lot of trees on the property, and most of them are coming down sadly anyway, but those are the ones we wanted to keep, the oldest and biggest.
Thank you.
And there is no park in that whole area, is there?
Campbell Park is the closest, and I know when I had my small kids, we were constantly walking down to Campbell Park, and it would take us an hour and a half, but, you know, I was that kind of person. But yes, I think for family.
Probably a 15-minute walk. Something like
No, when you have a 2-year-old, it's an hour and a half
that.
walk.
2-year-old,
Come
you're right.
on.
2-year-old, you're right, yes.
But yeah, Campbell Park is the closest. But I think that, you know, pocket parks are going to be our future. I mean, this is what brings a community together. It brings, you know, neighbors that they can go for their mile walk from Elk Ridge down to, you know, down past the Zahl property, you know, Amity Park, and then over into Sunset Heights and back, and they can stop at the park. You know, there'll be benches there. There's the trees. Can have, you know, kids can play. You know, we've got a pretty large area that we've set aside that we would like to have a pocket park. Love to have the city take it over, because then it can truly be for the whole city. But we're willing to do it just because we believe in it. That's, you know, how we raised our kids.
And it would be HOA.
Well, presumably, assuming there's no other option.
And one more thing that I'm kind of skeptical of, how big is this park? I mean, acres. One half acre,
Oh.
1 acre,
It's basically 2 lots,
Yeah.
2 lots.
It's a pocket park.
quarter acre
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Quarter acre, which is R10.
Got it.
Yeah.
R10 zoning. Okay. I think, any more questions? Okay, I'm going to ask people to keep their comments to 3 minutes.
Let me. Thank you. So something I forgot to tell you, we did get a letter in this week. It was too late to put in your packets. I put that all on the counter before you. It's dated June 20th from Doug Walker. So you have that before you. And then some of you may not be familiar with the term detached and attached single-family dwelling, which is kind of thrown out a lot. So I just want to explain that so you kind of understand what's being talked about. So a detached single-family dwelling is your typical house you see. You know, you have a lot, there's a house on it, and there's space in between the house and all property lines, all over the place. Your attached single-family dwelling is, so it's still a dwelling, single dwelling on a lot, but it's attached to the dwelling next to it. And so from the outside, it can look like, row housing is the, kind of the informal term used, but it would, it look like one big building, but it may be, several slices of different dwelling units. And so that's kind of the difference when you hear those terms. Another important thing is this is an annexation to determine zoning, which determines the potential uses and density. We're not designing a subdivision tonight. So I want to make sure that that's clear in case it helps.
Thank you.
I have a question for Jacob.
Sure.
I don't have the full description of an R5 zoning, but can you explain to me what is permitted in an R5 zoning?
Yeah, sure. So in R7, from a residential standpoint, and for a comparison,
Right.
so R7, your detached single-family dwelling is permitted. You can't do attached single-family dwellings. Duplexes are allowed via a conditional use permit. A conditional use permit is a special permit, requires a public hearing like this. So basically, it's a permit that allows a little more scrutiny. And And that's pretty much it. So the R7 is a little more sacred to the traditional detached single-family dwelling. When we look at R5, the detached single-family dwelling is allowed. The attached single-family dwelling is allowed. Duplexes are allowed as a permitted use. You don't need that special conditional use permit I mentioned. And then multi-dwelling units are basically apartments, which are 3 or more, are allowed by that conditional use permit. So there is a greater density allowed and types of uses in R5 compared to R7.
Okay, so just for clarification, if, not saying anything because we haven't heard testimony, but an R5 designation, we're not doing any plan, but if they come back and if they want anything but a duplex, they're going to have another hearing. For like a fourplex, they'd have to have another hearing. Conditional use.
Yeah, if it's R5,
They'd still have to have a conditional use for multifamily beyond a duplex.
yes. And if they want more than one dwelling per lot, they have to do, well, unless they do a partition, but that's only 3 parcels a year. That's done administratively. But if they want 3 or more lots, which is typically what you want because you want to develop it at once, the subdivision will require a public hearing, just like we're having here tonight.
Okay, I just wanted more clarification.
Sure. No, those are good questions.
Thank you.
So that brings us to, does anybody want to provide testimony in support of the application? Okay, I don't see any takers. Does anybody want to provide testimony that's neutral? You're not in favor or opposed. You just want to provide some neutral comment.
Okay, will you step up to the mic and state your name for the record? And reminder, try to keep it to 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. I apologize for interrupting. My name is Jim Scorney. I have a question. Was there a study done on another egress? That's to Eric.
No, you'll have a chance.
Well,
to
okay, I'll
answer
move
that.
on
Is
then.
that correct?
Yeah, that would be
Okay,
the rebuttal
all right,
opportunity.
I get it. Okay, I haven't spoken for the microphone since grade school, and I'm kind of sick. So, over 20 years ago, Ron Steinke started Sunset Heights. It was meant to be a high-end subdivision, and by the way, I'm the second oldest person living there. I've been there for 18 years. It was meant to be a high-end subdivision, which we were told no RVs or boats on the street unless they were behind gates. Once he had a lawyer send me a letter because I didn't give him the plans and paint colors of a shed I was building. I've lived there for 18 years and seen so many near accidents and too many to describe at the bottom of the hill. I organized and personally installed 2 mirrors at the bottom of that corner. All were vandalized not long after installation. I live 2/3 up the hill on Steinke. It's a steep, long hill, which takes lots of power to keep going up the hill, normal pace. Sometimes courteous people, other times people really step on it and make a lot of noise. But, you know, that's where I live, and I don't object to it. That's the way it is. We have 35 homes, 2 cars per home, 70 cars a day on average. You're talking about adding the same amount coming up that hill to take a shortcut over there because nobody's going to go up to Elk Ridge to come back. And I moved out here to get away from Portland traffic because I wouldn't want my kids riding bikes on the streets. We recently had a fire, and I had to move down to Oakwood Drive off of Vernonia, which is exactly what you proposed to build. Most of the rows were duplexes, a lot of 7,000 foot. But most of the people living in duplexes, they were 3 young men who were renting the house, which meant 3 vehicles, which meant the streets were lined with cars. Some of them were parked on the front lawns because there wasn't enough parking space, and not even counting RVs. Sorry, I wrote this an hour ago. We have houses on the bluff that are worth $600,000 that were built by people who wanted to retire there. I haven't seen Tom or any, but anyway, they were upset when Ron kind of gave up and turned it over to another builder who started putting in cookie cutter homes. And people objected to that. So, you know, we have promises, but we couldn't do anything about it. And this is even useless because you started the whole thing by saying you got 7 on 7 on each side. Why should we, on our backs, lower our property values? And I appreciate all the wonderful things they want to do for the city of St. Helens. I appreciate it. Then use the extra money and profit and build another egress road. Another quick little thing here. And basically, they're probably not going to do it because the developers, and it just will cost too much money. And so they're going to funnel the traffic through our neighborhood. If you want to have a continuous loop, make a walkway. Make it a bike path. Thank you for your time.
Any other neutral testimony?
Hi, I'm Lisa Scholl, and I am neutral because I'm not opposed to their annexation. I understand it's their property, they can annex and develop. My biggest concern is that it be consistent with what we already have. We're R7, I'm in the subdivision south of them, Sunset Heights, and then Elk Ridge is in between us. We're all R7 around there. The closest R5 is, I don't remember, we talked about it last time, nearly a mile away. There's no R5 near there. So I do believe this sets a precedent for spot zoning. And I understand the need for affordable housing. We need it here, but this is just not the right location for it. So I really recommend the R7. That's all I have. Thank you.
My name is Josh Jarvis. I also live in Sunset Heights. I am neighbors with Shoals. And any given night, you can look out on our loop and see 15 kids playing. And I know that you said this isn't a planning meeting, but my concern is my kids. And like you said, 70 more cars a day going through that area. That to me is not okay. That's why we moved to this area, is so that we can let our kids play out in the front yard with the neighbor kids, ride bikes around the loop, race around the loop, and have fun. But I'm worried that if they connect that through, I'm not going to be able to do that, and that's going to take away the main reason that I moved to this neighborhood. It's going to take, I'm not opposed to them building homes on their land that they want to sell. That's fine. That's their prerogative, right? I mean, it's their land. If they want to sell it and divide it out, I'm okay with that. That's why I'm neutral. I'm not okay with an influx of cars ripping through my neighborhood to get to another neighborhood where I have to be afraid for my 2-year-old. That's not okay with me. Or the other 2-year-olds that are running around. It's kind of nice we can let all our kids out and they can play. Of course, we're not just letting them run around unsupervised, but you don't have to be holding their hand all the time. And if you have an influx of vehicles coming through, like the other gentleman said too, if you're having row homes or you're having 3 or 4 younger men, younger women living in there, they're prone to drive a little bit faster. I was a younger man and I drove a little faster sometimes. So I've just, that's my only concern. Thank you.
Neutral?
I would just like to second what Josh said. They can.
Name?
My name's Camille Hoteling, and I'm Sunset Heights also. And I would just like to say that I don't care if they annex their land either, but I definitely disagree with their current proposal. There's a lot of reasons that I want to say, but mostly what stands out to me at this moment is the egress and the influx of traffic. We wouldn't benefit from their HOA park. And our neighborhood as it stands, it is a park. Those kids are close. Us parents, we're outside late in the evening talking, watching these kids play, and they're safe. And we all keep an eye out for each other's kids, and their HOA park wouldn't benefit us in the slightest. All this current plan would do is hurt us and our quality of life. And the manipulation that I feel is happening with touting this as a benefit to our community, that might be true to some extent, but there's no regard for the current community being given that's currently living there and our standard of life that we are there for and that we currently enjoy. And I would be devastated to lose that. And not to mention, we all know each other. We're not going to know the people driving in and out anymore, and we lose that. And I know that these neighborhoods are probably going to connect no matter what plan we come up with, but it wouldn't be so bad if they also had their own entrance off of Hankey, which is already crazy dangerous trying to pull out onto. So that's all. Thank you.
I guess I'll go next because I'm neutral and I have photos of the intersection that everyone is talking about. So,
Go ahead and state your name.
sorry. Hey everybody, most of you know me. I'm Michelle King. Nice to meet you all, and this is my first time also speaking in front of the committee, so I'm also a little bit nervous. But if we could start with the photos of, yes, right here, of the hill that everyone is talking about. So as you can see, there are cars lining the road. When we first moved in, it was a community rule that you could not park on the street overnight. You couldn't have yard sales, etc. The community agreement only lasted for 10 years. And so since then, as more people have moved in and as Camille got her house finished, the neighborhood is now developed. There's no empty spots. These are who is going to be living there. This was just taken at 1 o'clock today. You can see it's crowded. If you go ahead and flip to the next photograph, you'll see the blind corners. This is turning right onto Hankey and turning left out at the actual sewer grate. So in order to see the oncoming traffic, you need to pull all the way past the stop sign, past the stop line, and get out to the sewer grate. And this is the view that you get on a sunny day. If it's cloudy or foggy or typical Oregon weather, your visibility is even more limited. So if you flip to the next picture, I would like to point out that we also share this road with a quarry. There are rock haulers driving up and down this road pretty much every minute of the day right now with all the construction that's going on. You've seen it all around town. I don't know what is R5 zoning and what isn't, but over by Burgerville, over by DHS, those areas, there seems to be a lot of construction going in that is R5 zoning because these vehicles are driving past here every single day. And as already stated, this intersection has already been dangerous. For the last 2 years, I've asked the police to put, they've said that they would do speed stops. They said that they would request the city to put in a stop sign. It's dangerous. This is the most frightening part of my drive every morning is turning here to get out onto the highway. So I cannot even imagine more vehicles using this one entry point to the neighborhood, which we've all had conversations about the fact that it is the only entry point and exit point for us. If there's a natural disaster or if they need to get in there with emergency vehicles, they've got to go around that corner, up that hill, and now if there were a fire or something in the back neighborhood, they'd have to go through all that as well to get there. And as Jacob pointed out, we live in a usual area because we are surrounded by Weyerhaeuser property. It's not lived on. If there's a fire back there, like we just had near Yankton, it might not get reported until it's a large blaze. I mean, I just don't understand how we could only have one ingress and egress for that many vehicles on a road that was never even designed to support the amount of traffic it currently has. So that's my main concern, is that being the only way in and out for everybody. And my other concern is the devaluing of the property. I don't agree that having attached homes within 1 mile from a 3-story house will have no effect on your property value. So if you could flip to the next one. So he mentioned that Elk Ridge is one of the largest property developments going on right now. And as you can see on the top right-hand corner, those are all the houses that have sold within the last 2 to 2.5 years. And there are none that sold for under $250,000. There was one that sold for $251,000 in 2018, and it was a resale. It was not new construction. They currently have 3 homes priced at over $370,000 that have been on the market for less than 90 days. These houses are selling as quickly as they're being built. So I don't feel that there is no area of opportunity for R7 growth. As was pointed out, that was initially what we were told. We knew the neighborhoods were going to connect. We were just under the impression that they were going to connect and maintain the existing status of the houses that are already there in both Sunset Heights and Elk Ridge, which seems to also be expanding. They're now moving into the second phase of their development. So that's another however many houses going in as well. So thank you. That is my concern, is that road. It is very dangerous. I cannot believe there hasn't already been a fatal accident. There's going to be one if the traffic's increased and nothing's done, if they don't put in a stoplight or something. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, more people in the neutral club.
I just have a few questions.
Please state your name for the record.
Daniel Hotel.
Could you grab the mic and put it in front of you, Daniel? And then go ahead and restate your name.
Daniel Hoteling. His plan looked nice and all for the R5. So he said that he would be the developer. And he also mentioned, it looked like on there, his report, that the cap was going to be at $230,000. Is he going to stick to that number and not sell any house over 230? That's kind of a fairly low estimate for construction costs. And speaking of construction costs, I'm just curious if he's actually had any construction estimates on what the houses are actually going to take to build and what he's going to try to profit.
So what I have to stop you on is we're actually here strictly for zoning
Okay.
and not for the planned development, okay? And so I have to come back to that
Okay.
because Jacob stated that to everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then the one question I had about R5, if we're lacking so much on it, why aren't we just making everything R5 and just doing it with the R7, just let everyone do R5 is the other question I had. If it's so good, why not just do everything R5 anymore? And the other question I had, is there a limit that's going to be put on attached or detached? Or is it just going to be R5 and they just figure that out later?
That could be something that in the zoning process could be figured out later.
So
Yes.
so it's actually possible then for all of them to be attached.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's also possible right now for apartments to go in as well.
But it would be a different
with
hearing.
a special
different hearing.
permit. It's still possible for apartments to go in.
Yeah, we're talking about
Oh,
zoning,
R7.
and
Yeah.
zoning provides the options.
If we did the R5, it is possible on an R5 for apartments to still go in with another public hearing.
AR and A5.
No,
But you
that
you
you're
said for
yes,
A5 with a
R5 allows apartments with a conditional use permit.
Yep.
So yes,
So
So
you
there'd
just
be a
get
hearing.
So there's a hearing and a permit, but it's possible to have apartments on R5 if we go for R5.
Yep.
So how I see it is we're either going to be R7 or we could actually have apartments there. It's a possibility. So that's one of the issues I have. It's not, hey, we'd like to have just these houses and a couple of duplexes. It's the real possibility of all of them being attached and apartments being there as well. So there's once it's zoned R5, there's not a lot of leeway for anyone to come and say, hey, that's a lot of attached buildings. There's nothing for us to go back on. And the fact of the matter, the reason I think everyone is here, and I'll just come out and say it, is we're all here because of money. It's going to, for us, we all think it's going to devalue our properties. For the people who are for it, it's the biggest bang for their buck. If he really wanted to benefit the community, he could donate his land to a community action team and let them build sweat equity, if that's really great. But we're all here for money. I spent a lot of time and a lot of money building a house. And also with his plan that he showed of saying, hey, he promises to do this type of house and that type of house. A 2.5-story house would be extremely expensive to build. A 2-story house is very hard and difficult, let alone a 2.5-story. The higher up you go, and actually I think City St. Helens were limited at 36 feet on the height for all of our buildings. And to put a 2.5-story house in would be extremely difficult and very expensive, and the architecture is also very expensive as well. So I don't think that it's going to be if he sticks to his nice plan, that it's going to be that 230,000 is just unattainable.
Thank you.
Unless they're apartments.
Thank you, Daniel.
Any more neutrals?
Yeah, there was one. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Shauna Strop Harrison. I'm a local realtor. Nice seeing you guys all here again. We're doing lots of developing these days. So my big deal, of course, is infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. How are we going to continue to support all of this building that we're doing? My God. So where do I start? I will make it brief, though. I'm not going to get into the personal aspects of it. I'm not going to get into the blah, 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 none of that. I don't have no kids, but I am worried about kids. You guys already know that. I almost see one get hit every day on the corner where I live, Vernonia, MacArthur. So the last year, the city has approved several large developments and minimal to no road improvements to support it. We do live in an unusual land indeed. Exactly what the lady who got up here before me stated. Moving rock in and out of that quarry coming off of Hankey Road is extremely dangerous. And the influx of houses going in there, and again, I know you guys say, well, they're going to do this, they're going to make improvements, it'll be up to code today, but there's nothing going down the hill to help. You guys have got a development going on down on Pittsburgh Road. As of right now, it doesn't even look like sidewalks are going to possibly be there. I don't know, I'm sure they probably will, but maybe I'm just not visioning it correctly. I know they're still improving all that. But, you've got, it is packed out at Campbell Park with baseball and kids and people almost getting hit all day long. And Vernonia Road has become a major thoroughway. You guys have rezoned everything to suit your builders, but not to suit the community you guys serve. I'm so sick of it. It's so sad because there's no reason for it. Our proximity to Portland, we are growing whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter. They are coming. But you know what else? Values are kind of... rates have already went up 2 times this year. They said they're going to do 2 more interest rate raises. I just had a place for $320,000 that was an attached home. Mind you this, attached home. So think of that real quickly when you guys decide to approve your attached homes that didn't appraise out because there was no other comps for it. And the comps that they were substandard. They were on half-size lots, but those were the only ones. And let's face it, when people suffer, we all suffer, especially in subdivisions. When somebody loses a house down the street from you and it's in disarray, there goes your value, and it drops like flies. So I just can't come down here enough and stress, especially when you guys are talking about things about like basically pushing out the pool from even being usable because you guys are going to charge them water rates and you guys are overspending for Halloween Town. How can we not pay attention to that? You guys have another packed house again. I thought I was coming down here for the hospital. I can't even keep up.
So we're trying to keep this to zoning, okay?
Well,
that's what this hearing's about.
But let's face it, the zoning changing goes hand in hand with the infrastructure improvements to support it, period. That's a fact, whether you like it or not. And the things are what they are. You guys can do whatever you like, but your people are talking to you. I understand. I appreciate all your support and everything you guys do, and you're trying. And, I know it's not easy. The process of government is a process of government. However, I can't stress enough, We are sick of it. We are sick of being, you know, whether you like it or not, we are a commuter city. And people up and down that road in Portland all day long, and they're coming here in droves. They will continue to come here in droves, build cheaper properties, and yes, they'll even come even more in droves. But I'll tell you what, if I've got to worry about driving on another road where kids have got to walk in a damn ditch, I'm just so sick of it. And it just makes me hot mad. So I'm sorry. I'd like to try to keep my composure, but I hope you all take that into consideration when you decide to do your zoning again.
One clarification I would like to state before she takes off, because she went way beyond that, was that we are not charging the pool water. We are working with the pool. And we did not overspend on Halloween Town. It was a misprint in the paper. So don't always believe what you read. And if you want to find out, come ask us. Okay? So that went out of the zoning, but I felt I had to defend ourselves, and we are putting a sidewalk in from down North Vernonia. That is in the works. So we've heard you. We appreciate, Shauna comes down quite a bit, and she's actually beneficial to pointing out some good things. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Something neutral?
No, you already had your 3 minutes. Nope. We gotta get on. Sorry.
And
I got another public hearing.
And the
guys.
Millard Road Hospital public forum is still on the docket. So any more neutral on this matter? I think we have a couple more neutrals.
My name is Robin Smith, and I live up in Sunset Heights. And I want to make it clear that I am completely fine with them having with building, because I see this area growing by leaps and bounds. I grew up here. I've seen it be very small and come back many years later to see how big it's blown up. I know the need for homes. I see that it's important. But what I feel the same as Michelle, who actually earlier showed the photos, is the hillside there it's hard to see. Realistically, to add additional homes, that there's their egress route, there's a huge concern. I've handled risk management for 15 years, and that is a big concern in the event of an emergency and how we get help in the event that something happens, God forbid. So I just hope that additional egress routes be created to go down to that road. And for anybody who has a new student driver, feel free to come over to our area. And I guarantee you will have a white knuckle effect as your child is pulling out onto that road, and you're praying to God that they don't hit the hillside on the other side or get struck by a vehicle. I have personally almost encountered 500 accidents myself. It's a very unsafe area, and that's my 2 bits. But good luck, and hopefully this meeting goes a little quicker for you.
Name again for the record.
Robin Smith.
Thank you, Robin.
I think we have at least one more neutral.
Go ahead and state your name for the record,
Oh,
please.
My name is Janis Simdens.
Okay.
I've kind of listened to everything here, but I'm new to this community. I'm one of those that's mentioned in there as the silent generation. I'm over 71. So we purchased our property on Skyline Drive. In fact, our property is right on the corner of Hankey and Stein. I mean, we know what they're talking about. But I listened to all this. The one thing I noticed, they didn't discuss at all how it's going to affect the neighborhood if we rezone it. The neighborhood, right there, adjacent. Now, I've developed a lot of properties, hundreds of acres. I've constructed homes. That's not my profession, but I've done that. I know what it takes, and I've never, every time I've seen this where you have 2 different, here we have R7, 2 upper class, what I consider, communities, and then you're going to rezone it in the center of it. They never have worked. you know, I hear this talk about, well, we're going to simulate. You never can assimilate to the positive. It's always detrimental. I lived in Philadelphia. I saw what happened there when they tried this kind of stuff. You know, we had to move. We moved out to the suburbs because it does not work. When you plan something like this, and I've been involved in planning it, and you know, the construction, everything. The so-called lower income developments, the townhouses, you separate them. They can be adjacent to a bigger community, but you don't put them in between two developed, beautiful communities. Now, there's this property next door to their property that they talk about, that's on Pittsburgh. Well, why don't they go and negotiate with that? That'd be beautiful. It's separate. It's only adjacent to their property on that one side. It's huge. You know, he should talk to the developers. Maybe they can put in something like that. Okay. Now, I've seen where they put that in, and what's happened basically is people shy away from. You know, you've got these 3 or 4 beautiful homes, and then you've got these townhouses. People are not going to pay a lot of money for those big homes living next to those so-called lower, you know, row houses. I lived in row houses, you know. And, you know, so the other aspect is the in and out. Nothing has been discussed about the neighborhood in their report about the in and out of the community there. That's going to be an isolated community going through 2 nice developed communities. When we had contracted to move here, we got a call from the trucking company saying, well, it's going to be extra expense. I said, why? Well, you know, you've got to go up this stanky, and our 18-wheeler can't make the turn afterwards, and then you got to make another turn. And now, can you imagine these trucks are going to be building all this stuff? They can't make it up there. You should be there in the wintertime. You see cars parked down below because nobody can make it up, even though it's got sand on there. I mean, there's no discussion about the egress and, you know, how to get in and out of there. Mm-hmm. The other side is just as bad, you know. So it was mentioned here, I mean, if you're going to do it and rezone it, which you should really, you know, right now my understanding from the reports are spot zoning is prohibited. You know, it's right. That was in your planning document. So you're going to make an exception now for spot zoning when there are other areas you can do that. Now, I went to somewhere, I think it's Northwest. I'm still confused about the direction here. Northwest St. Helens there, and it was a small community of 1-level new homes, very small ones. And then it ended, the street, and I heard some of the people saying, oh, well, they're supposed to develop townhouses there and you know, lower income people, but the city denied it. You know, that's what somebody asked another person, the neighbor there. And I said to myself, my gosh, I wonder why, you know, because that's an area that, you know, would probably fit the R5. Yeah. And it was already planned, my understanding. And then suddenly it was tabled or cut off. And so anyway, I just want to mention that it doesn't work. I've seen it happen, but usually I could give you a whole story about what happens and why it fails. Mm-hmm. Okay, it does decrease values. I told this to the principal broker for Keller Williams, who I know personally, and I said, do you know what they're trying to do here? When I told them it's going to be, she goes, unbelievable. Your values are going to, I mean, you'd be lucky if you can sell your home sometime for what you paid. So anyway, that's.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, any more neutral, or are we on to opposed?
Yes, you can, but you have to come up to the microphone and state your name, please, for the record.
Okay, my name is Susanna Garza, and I live at the very last house where the white sign says Skyline Drive. That's me.
Okay.
I think the one point that hasn't been brought up, again, is about traffic. If there is a road cut through there, not only will the new development use that road, but a lot of people in the Elk Ridge development will use that road, because why would they go up and around to their properties when they can cut right through their properties? The entire right-hand side of that Elk Ridge development is going to cut through rather than go around. So you're not talking just the traffic from the vehicles that are going to be in this new development. You're talking about the traffic that's going up at Elk Ridge as well. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Okay, are we on to the opposed category?
Really? We didn't know that.
Are you opposed? I think we're on to opposed. Okay.
Could you please state your name for the record?
It's Ryan Scholl, and I don't have much, and I'm not going to go into detail about the traffic and all that because you're going to hear a lot of that. But he did present a really good sales pitch, and that's all it was a sales pitch. He told me it was going to be 28 detached homes and 2 attached homes. Now it's 22 detached homes and 8 attached homes. So could that change to all of it being attached down the road? Just pitching what we want to hear. It's R7 above and below, and right in the middle, it'd be spot zoning. We're asking for you just to, listen to all the citizens here that are here from both subdivisions. We're all asking for R7, not R5. So he presents, like I say, he presents a really good thing, and it looks beautiful on paper, and we can all sit here and sell it like that. But when it comes down to the end of the day, it's profit for him, and R7 would dip into his profit margin and his desire. And like I said, we're just asking you guys to consider all of the current citizens of the city that are here, the city people that are living here, that are together, coming together for a thing, and we've been behaved, and we're just asking you guys to listen to our voice of asking for R7.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi.
I'm David Nelson, Elk Ridge. I'm the 4th homeowner up in there of the current existing 70 homes. Some things we haven't quite talked about. You'll get a lot of emotion about the traffic and community and stuff. Just briefly, I live just above where the P1L is up there, or where it says RS Argument PDF. During the summertime, I bring out my 12-foot movie screen, set up a projector. The neighbors come around, bring their grills, and we watch movies there. So connecting that to any other neighborhood is definitely going to be a detriment. It's inevitable, and it's inevitable because we have a stub there, and there is a stub in there. That, by definition, defines what we're talking about here. That when those plans were laid for those, they anticipated that the land in between was going to be developed. They put the stubs in there for the roads, and that therefore, that is the definition of a spot zone if you change it to an R5. It has to stay R7. Has to. The other question we haven't talked about, in his plan, dictates that the existing structures there stay. So my question is, what is the rules? If you change it to an R5, can it still have bigger lots? Can existing structures that aren't in compliance with that stay on that property? Because that is part of the plan. Additionally, we've talked about how bad the egress is now. Right above where the blue triangle is, where it says Elk Meadows Drive, is a spur road that's going to the new properties. Over 100, I originally heard 200 additional lots are being developed there. All of that traffic is coming down that one road onto Hankey Road. So the existing 70 homes at 2.5 cars apiece are coming down there, and we're going to add possibly another 200 cars plus the 30 that this gentleman wants to add. That is way going to be overwhelmed. And in some time, we're going to have to look at another way of getting out of the community that's already been approved for 170 homes. But changing that to an R5 is not the right option. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Anna Hansen. I also live in Elk Ridge. I'm trying really hard to take the emotion out of this because unfortunately, these people gave us a different story than what they've presented tonight. So I am now very suspicious with anything that he's presented, very distrustful. So I agree with most everything that's been said, the different arguments about the traffic and emergency services. One of the things I hadn't heard thus far is the water pressure. We have such horrible water pressure issues. We've actually had to have the city come out and pressure test it multiple times, and it's very low. In fact, I'm the third house over from where this property sits. The second house over, our neighbor, they actually were without water for quite a while because of the poor pressure of the water. So it's a very big issue. So, I mean, any more homes is going to be a bigger issue, but especially majority of homes. My husband and I personally worked really hard to build our home, and we built it on a dead end because we lived in a traffic-y, lower income area before, and it was horrible. Horrible. We put tens of thousands of dollars into the home we owned before, trying to build it up. It was my husband's childhood home, the memories and whatnot. We could have put $1 million into our home at that point, and it would never have been $1 million home, which is why we chose to build up where we're at. I work with property management, and I found it interesting that he brought up community action team and lower income so everybody can afford these homes, and I think that's wonderful. And unfortunately, you're talking, somebody brought up, it's going to be either already wealthy people purchasing these homes to use them as rentals, or it's going to be 4 or 5, younger people, one person purchasing but having roommates to afford. And so it's not just going to be 2 cars per home. It's going to be more, plus the deliveries, plus. I'm very worried about the traffic, and I understand everybody in Sunset Heights is thinking that they're going to come, up and around through there. I fear it's going to happen through ours also. The private road that right now is the access to that property is a question for me. From my understanding, I could be completely wrong, but from my understanding, Elk Ridge owns that private drive. It's Barrick Lane. I'm curious as to why. I would hope that there would be some kind of deal we could make, and he could improve that road and use that as their own entrance and not open up to where it's a full circle. We also have a DEQ site that is behind our homes on their property side. So if Barrick Road is here, this is where our DEQ site is, their property, and then Sunset Heights. We're right now, last I heard, our developer is battling with the city and DEQ and nameless other people because it was supposed to be a park. It was supposed to be a water runoff area. It's supposed to cleanse the water before it goes into Milton Creek. So all of the water and runoff from this new neighborhood, is that going to be coming through this DEQ site also? So is the city going to take this over? How is that going to work with all that runoff going into Milton Creek? So I'm not sure if I'm staying within the parameters of the R5 versus R7.
Okay, you broke out a little bit.
I'm sorry. For me, it was,
Yep.
again, trying not to be emotional about it, but
Sure. Thank you, Anna.
bringing up things that could matter.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
My name is Doug Walker, and Jacob mentioned my letter that I wrote. I didn't think I was going to make it here tonight. A few hours ago, I was just discharged from the hospital. But I'm here because I'm concerned. All of the comments about the traffic situation and the need for additional egress into this development is, I just echo those comments. I'm not going to go into it in detail. The situation of putting an R5 development right between two existing R7 developments, as they've stated, it's pretty much that spot zoning thing, and it should not be done. I don't think it's within the parameters of the plans, the city's plans. And the one more thing I wanted to mention was that we're in the midst of the beginning of a growing economy. We're going to have higher priced homes. We're going to have higher incomes. It's going to get better, but what St. Helens needs is not low-cost homes. St. Helens needs more family wage jobs. You can't work at McDonald's and buy an R5 house or an R7 house. We need good jobs in this town. And I just think that the R5 designation does not fit this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually underlined that in red when I read your letter. We need more jobs.
Hi, my name's Ken McFarland, and I'm a resident of Elk Ridge. And I'm not going to beat that horse of the traffic or anything else. So try to keep my argument specific to the difference between R5 and R7 and the justification to keep it R7. I value the Zahl's right to develop their property, and they're privileged to make some money off of it. But when we look at it and say, okay, what's really truly at stake? In their plan that was presented in the packet last night or yesterday, they're looking at $2 million and change if zoned R7, $2.4 million and change if zoned R5. That's clearly stated in their plan. What's not clearly stated is that the Zahls will make money based on the design, construction, and marketing of each house built. They are going to perform their own architectural design, hire and lead their own construction crew uninterrupted by competing jobs, perform all contracting, leveraging long-term relationship with key subcontractors over life of subdivision construction. It's important to note they've got footnotes associated with their statement, because their statement of leveraging Eric's building and engineering experience to lead a lean design build company providing all construction services. Their statement is quoted, targeting smaller, more affordable homes is our primary step in achieving an affordable product, which acknowledges that in the end, sale price is determined by the market. However, another key step is maintaining focus on cost efficiency during construction. By having our own crew, we can be more focused on optimizing cost efficiency in some targeted areas while maintaining standards of quality that are naturally motivated when the builder is at once the designer and marketer of the property. For example, based on experience designing and building our house, Eric understands how to practically implement older style exterior architectural design details without cutting architectural effect, but in a cost-effective way using readily available commodity building materials. However, new construction siting crews are typically not specialized in these methods. So their look at $2.4 million in change if zoned R5 really is about $3.5 million, because they're going to get the 6% marketing fee. They're also going to design or create their own company for the construction and the architecture, and it will be a for-profit company, and I believe it's stated as such in their document. So they're going to have a margin on top of that. Great. I think that's fantastic, because I would love to make $3.5 million on a 7-acre property I bought 20 years ago. I think that it's fantastic for them, and I would encourage that. However, the difference between an R5 and an R7, in my estimate, is about $650,000 to $750,000. They're still going to make more than $2.5 million on this whole deal if they go to R5 and they build the 23 houses as presented in his plan. Now, with the city and the spot zoning. City statutes don't allow for the spot zoning. And the primary reason the Planning Commission is recommending R7 zoning is because we have on both sides, on 3 sides of their property. Their report suggests the property immediately to the east and adjacent to their property will be at some time annexed into the city of St. Helens, and then it may be zoned R5. That's a rather large assumption. And I don't believe that there's a realistic timeline for the city to annex this property, and Mr. Zahl stated as much in his presentation and his discussions about his conversation with the Planning Commission. The bigger issue I see, and while I respect Mr. Zahl, I think that breaking down his statements in his proposal is he's a hobbyist architect. His professional experience is in electrical and software engineering, yet designing and building his own house qualifies him to build, design, and market an entire subdivision, or so it's stated. And not only does his hobby qualify him to do this, it makes him more qualified than experienced home builders because they aren't specialized in siting practices, as concepts or design of houses built in the 1900 to 1930 era. So not only is he more qualified than an experienced professional siting crews, he's going to teach his own crews how to do this for an entire subdivision. That's fair. My hobbies include kayaking and woodworking, and I'm 100% confident that I could build a boat that'll get me safely across the Columbia. But I don't believe that it'll get me 30 ships that will be big enough to house families in. So what happens when they fail? What happens to their subdivision when they fail? What happens to ours? Because they will fail. And while I'm not encouraging or hoping or wanting his failure, I'm actually hoping for his success because I would love to see somebody in Columbia County come out $2.5 million richer when this is all done. But what happens to his success, or what happens to his failures, and what happens to us? Failure's a fact of life. I know. If you want to take my references and to one of my ginormous failures, take a 10-minute drive north of Claskeneye. And a couple of people I know, because we've had conversations about, or I recognize because we've had conversations about Cascade Grain. I was the operations director and I broke ground on that facility. So I think that it allows me to speak with some authority about the difficulties that one can experience in large-scale construction within Columbia County, as well as the pitfalls and perils of trying to teach an old contractor new tricks. However, my objection to his qualifications and my opinion of his chances of success have nothing to do with the issue before the council tonight. Whether or not this subdivision happens is not in question. I believe it should happen. I believe that he has the right and she has the right to develop their property. But I do think that this is a project to keep a close eye on over the month and years to come with proper zoning, and limiting the number of houses that can be built on the property is where it starts. And as a result, I think that it would be wrong and it would be detrimental to both the Elk Ridge and the Sunset Heights communities, as well as the city of St. Helens, to allow this to be continued forward as an R5. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Karnowski, and I'll make this really quick. It has nothing to do with annexations or zonings, but why doesn't the city pursue building on buildable lots within the city? There's got to be hundreds, if not thousands of them out there. Already have sewer, already have roads. You don't have to go through the annexation or anything. Why does it seem like you have a blind eye to that? Thank you.
Okay. I think I don't see anybody else, Jacob.
Is there anybody else? Last call. Okay.
Gina Cisco, and I live on Steinke Drive in the Sunset Heights neighborhood, and I just want to voice that I am opposed to having it be an R5. It just does not make sense to sandwich something in that doesn't fit in the neighborhood. And I'm also, since I do live on the Steinke Drive road and I have little children, and I'm afraid to let them go outside as it is when it's people driving up and down, they really need to look into having their own access. And that was our concern when they actually went around the neighborhood, and they didn't say that they weren't planning that, but that's what we kind of think that that should happen for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Marilyn West. I live in Sunset Heights. Because we didn't get any notification of a zone change, we didn't have a whole lot of time to think about this or even find out what the project was. We just found out about this project maybe 3 days ago due to a neighbor telling my neighbor word of mouth. And so I just had a question about the access road itself and wondering why can't they use their private road instead of Stanky? What's the reason for that?
We can't.
On the road,
we-
on
that-
their,
that-
on
that-
their private road?
So they'll have a chance, Marilyn. Marilyn.
Yes.
So they'll have a chance to have a rebuttal, and hopefully they write.
Oh,
down
they
that
do?
question.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
yes.
I
Hopefully they
still
write down that
haven't heard
question.
any, until tonight, I didn't realize that Stanky was going to be the main road up, to access that
Yeah.
property. So that's just the question of why
Mhm.
can't they do that?
It's a good question.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Todd Cathers. I live in Sunset Heights. The Zahls, when they first started this, they did come around and talk to people. I guess from the information I was given, I guess I misunderstood. Bottom line is, I bought my house in that specific area, not because I wanted parks or anything else, because it was a high-end development. It is an investment. Okay, I've been there 13 years. I bought that as an investment. Okay, I've had friends that have had try to sell their houses, or even try to get loans or whatever. And a lot of times, what happens is they take the surrounding structures, and then they're gonna, okay, well, we get all these prices of what they think they're worth, and then they make some kind of goofy appraisal. Okay, so if you got a $370,000 house and you got a $230,000 house, that's a big difference. When they're going to do an appraisal, that's a huge difference. Okay, I didn't work 13 years to lose money on my house. That is my retirement, or part of it. I don't plan on staying in St. Helens, but I did raise 2 kids here. And these people, I'll tell you right now, they have a big concern about access. Because my poor neighbor over there had a fire. The fire trucks blocked the road. We were done. We were done for 6 hours. We couldn't get anything in or out of there. Thank God it happened at 1 o'clock in the morning, because if it would have happened during prime time, you have 70 cars. Where are they going to go? And I'll tell you right now, it's not just 2 cars per household. Take it from me. I had 2 daughters that both drove, so I had 4 cars in there. Sorry, neighbors. But I had 4 cars in there until my daughters left for college. Okay? And I'm just saying that, if the Zahls want to develop that land, I'm for the R7. But I am not for the R5 anymore. That's ridiculous. I mean, we are talking investments. We're talking retirements. We're talking safety. So I really hope that you guys consider what everybody has said here, and not, I'm not trying to be the bad guy or anybody, but you gotta be logical about it. You've heard a lot of testimonies here. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Any more?
Yes, my name is Ray Andrews. I actually live on the very last house on Wapiti Drive. And this is going to have a major effect on us because we're going to go from almost zero traffic in front of our house to all kinds of traffic in front of our house, including where Barrick Road is now going to go around. It's going to go right in front of my house, and then if that road goes through over to Sunset Heights, that is adjoining my property. And I have the same concern. I see the value of my house just plummeting from going from an R7 to an R5 in this new development. And it changes why I even moved here and why I particularly selected that lot, is because it was next to a property that was not going to be developed or anything, and now it's all changed. So, thank you.
Last call. I think it's time for rebuttal. Applicant's rebuttal.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing up all of the concerns. We did try talking with many of you, but I think a lot more came out tonight. So, am I on? Can you hear me? Okay.
Okay. Well, I think we both took notes on people's concerns, and so we probably both will be responding. You know, okay, one thing when we talk about traffic, a traffic study will have to take place. And I think maybe there's a lot of fears being expressed here. There's two big fears I hear. One is traffic, and the other is their home values. I think that, and those are really, really good concerns. I think that there will be a traffic study, and that, of course, we will have to do. And I'm addressing really the audience here because I don't think that that's understood, and that we will abide by what the traffic study recommends. Though, unfortunately, years ago when both of those subdivisions got put in, it was put in very poorly, those accesses to Hankey Road, and I recognize that. However, it can be worked with.
Can you bring up, I had a picture too, Michelle, can you bring up my picture that says starts with
Yeah. Also, Elk Ridge does have in its plans, or at least it has had in its plans, that as they develop the upper part, that there would be another entrance. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know, but that has been part of it. I think there's, so Eric has a view here. We saw a view from somebody earlier on, Michelle, right? And this is the same view.
Well, it's not quite the same because her view was pulled further up all the way to the manhole.
I actually took both to show how far you have to pull forward. So
Right.
There's this photo, and then there's the photo showing the manhole where you actually have to pull out.
Right. So in addition to what you showed, like even when you pull out, it's still not great visibility.
And that line right there is about 10 feet in front of the stop sign. So you have the stop sign, then you have the stop line, and then you have another 5 feet you have to pull forward in order to be able to see.
One thing, I don't know if you folks agree, the position of that telephone pole only makes matters worse. Anyway, we can't solve all this here tonight, but the point is, I think, we agree that Stanky Drive, pulling out in a Stanky, I pull out in a Stanky Drive because I ride my bike over there. Try pulling out in a bike with your headphones on. It's all sight. Anyway, the point is, we agree. I don't know if there's any way, You know, but you also have to look at, you know, like,
We're not going to do this crosstalk because we're not here to debate. We're here to, we are as a
Okay,
council are going to
sorry.
make this decision.
Sorry,
Okay, so please address us and let's get on with this. And you can answer the questions,
Okay.
but we're not going to.
I apologize.
I
Okay.
know they're your neighbors, and I understand.
Okay, so the point is, we agree that there could be some improvements in Steinke Road, and putting some of the burden on that on our subdivision as far as cost seems reasonable to us. Okay, as far as emergency access, I also heard some concerns of emergency access. I don't quite understand how it's coming out as opposition to our subdivision, because we're providing emergency access. We're connecting you to another access, both sides. You now have emergency access because you have Elk Meadows on Elk Ridge and you have Steinke Drive. Now you have a way to get through. You do have another emergency access.
We've heard about the fire from 4 different people. They blocked it off at 1 o'clock in the morning. We heard the testimony. We are listening to the testimony. Trust me, we are listening very carefully to each and every one of you. Okay.
Correct. An R7 would connect just as well as an R5. Noted. As far as the egress, concerns over egress, to having our subdivision have our own egress, there is a complication as far as, you know, Barrack Lane, the way the land was set up when we purchased the land was not owned by us. The only access to our property was not owned by us. It's an easement. Currently, the HOA, now it's, you know, it's been going through several owners at Elk Ridge, and now the HOA of Elk Ridge is stuck with ownership of that. So we actually, our access is an easement given by HOA of Elk Ridge. So somebody was mentioning about any deals to work on that. That's possible. There's, one thing I want to say though is that I understand a lot of the concern over the traffic. I just want people to be realistic about what our subdivision is, how it's affecting that. I think it's reasonable that we should do things to improve, particularly Steinke Drive, because that's a really bad one. Elk Ridge doesn't seem as bad, or Elk Meadows Drive. But I just, if people can kind of think about how we can work together, maybe it's reasonable for us to improve it some, but we can't, I don't think it's fair or right for a 30-unit subdivision to fix the traffic problems of, you know, when Elk Ridge is fully built out, you know, 170 plus 42, and so, you know, a 210 unit subdivision plan that was kind of laid out 20 and then 10 years ago. We can help, but I don't think we can solve it completely the way everybody wants. Okay, go ahead.
So I think that addresses part of the issue about the traffic. I think that you know, we've been there for 22 years. And so we saw both of the developments being developed. We actually supported many of the things. You know, they were at 10,000 square foot lots. We supported the developer to bring it down to 7,000 square foot lots so that he could so-called make more profit, sell them cheaper. So, I mean, we consider ourselves part of the community because of us. You know, many of these other lots were able to be built. The other thing is, you know, that barricade at the bottom of Steinke Drive, nothing was happening. And and finally, we were the ones that worked with the road department to get that barricade up there. The forest behind us, they were logging, and they logged a couple years back. It's because I worked with them for 2 years to give us that wonderful buffer. You know, I mean, they could have logged right up to the property line, and that would have been horrible about taking down our property values, you know, of all the neighborhoods. They gave us a wonderful buffer. You know, I worked with Weyerhaeuser. I'm there. This is my community. Talking about traffic, I don't think traffic is the issue between 5,000 and 7,000 square foot lots, because we're only adding really a few more.
We're talking about
houses.
8 additional houses, 8 additional
Additional
units
families.
out of 210 units total.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Daniel? Daniel, you had your chance.
The
Just let them-
separating, and I think that there's a fear factor whenever you say affordable. I think if anyone hears the word affordable, they think that very, that people who are not going to take care of their property, that are going to be, I don't know, the scum of the earth. When we say affordable, we're saying that so people that have $60,000 jobs can buy a home, and we're not talking about bringing down home prices, and that's a big fear people have, is their home prices. And I think maybe what we need to do, is get some more data rather than that huge fear factor. And so anyway, you had something about.
I did. I didn't know him, but Yondas? Oh, he's not here. He was talking about how he hasn't seen mixed use work, how it's always brought property values down. I mean, okay. So it can be true. I'm not doubting that it can be true, and often is true. But I've looked at East Bay. Okay, what I'm trying to do is, if you've heard of the new urbanist movement, if you look at divisions.
Now, Daniel and Daniel and the other guy, what I got to say to you guys is, we have to get through this public hearing. It's his turn. You had your turn. I gave everybody the chance. Now listen. He's the applicant. He is the applicant. Now, what I'm going to tell you is, you had your chance. Just let them, and we have a whole nother public hearing. If you guys want to find out how we're going to deliberate on this, we're going to be here till 9, probably 10 o'clock, and then that's fine. That's fine. I signed up for this. But you guys keep interrupting. I apologize. Okay? Continue, please.
Thank you. So if you look at some new urbanist developments like in East Beach, Virginia, I'm not expecting people to know that, but I've looked at a lot of stuff. They're using new urbanists, if somebody wants to look it up later. The development there, you can look on Zillow, you can look at the home prices there. It's a mixed use, 1,500 square foot row houses, 4,000 square foot houses, $1 million houses mixed with $300,000 houses with row houses. Property values there are 30% higher than adjacent areas. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to develop that, because those are high-end houses, okay? So I'm not saying that that's an exact analogy, but I'm saying it can be done. Many times when it's just haphazard, it doesn't work, okay, granted, but it can be done. I'm just trying to say, and I'm trying to do that.
When Sassia's property was separated, it was separated into, the Steinke's and the barracks, and then Sassia, it went through, and it became Elk Ridge. So there were those 3 parcels. It was always understood that those 3 parcels would be developed as one continuous road system. And so it's really unfortunate that maybe some people bought their homes thinking that they would be isolated, or that they, and they would people walk across our property all the time. We allow them to have their dogs on our property. They cut across. And we've encouraged that. I mean, we have the bounty of this land, and for the last 20 years, we've encouraged neighbors. And it is really sad to lose that. And I think that, unfortunately, the plan was there ahead of time. You know, those whenever a barricade is there, you know, your house was bought on that barricade, but that's a sign that that's a barricade. That means that that road will be extended. But we'd like to do it in a manner that is how should I say, that is a very nice neighborhood. Now, I think that when you have really, you have an experience, you know, we dealt with both developers when we lived there. So we went through all the building of the other houses. And I have to tell you, we were in court because of the unethical practices, especially on one of the developers. And it was just really sad. You get this really bad flavor in your mouth about a developer. You know, when a developer goes and they just deed your property over themselves, you know, a portion of it because they needed it. We went through a year or two of this. And so when you get this feeling of a developer being an other, a developer is an evil entity. They're out to get you. They're out to make all the profit. Unfortunately, that does happen. All we can say is that we're going to still be living there. That's our home. And we've experienced the developer who really doesn't care, because really, you know, we could sell our property to a developer. And then, well, they have lawyers. They've got a lot more money than we do. I'm sorry. You know, and then it's like they're going to build, you know, probably to make the most money and to put the least into it. One person also mentioned about the park, but the park would only be for the HOA and that they would have no access or rights to the park. This has to do with their neighborhoods. So, for example, Elk Ridge, which is HOA, can work with our HOA, so they can have full rights to the park. Well, that doesn't mean that they couldn't also. Yeah, Elk Ridge does. You know, so they can work with it, and perhaps they can work with the city to take it over. Our goal is to have that as a pocket park for the neighborhood. I know there's a lot of cynicism because people hear someone say something. I had two people said that basically they said we lied to them. I'm sorry that whatever they heard us say was not what they heard today, but I heard the same thing.
We worked very hard at being forthright. We did talk to people. You know, sometimes communication, I don't know what people hear or don't, you know, it can happen to anybody, but I really was not.
We had a website. We showed the website. We had our computer with us going around offering people to look at it if they wanted to spend the time. We never.
Just in fairness, we only were going to people 300 feet away because they knew about the meeting.
Yeah. Let's see here. About yes.
Doug Walker was talking about you know, need for good jobs. I just wanted to point out that you know, things, there might be reason to be hopeful, but you know, historically is a pretty strong, I mean, wages have not been keeping up with housing prices. That's just a fact. So you know, it would take quite a lot to turn that around. We have to somehow figure out, you know, the reality that we're in. We can hope for more, and of course we all hope it gets better, but we have to acknowledge the reality we're in. We can't just, you know, hope for the housing affordability and problems to just go away because of some hope for better wages, although we should be working for them. But
someone mentioned about water runoff. I mean, of course, that's with the engineering. That also is seen to with a water retention pond. This is common things. So, you know, the go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to address Ken McFarland. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reading that whole thing. I put this thing that was in the application packet, our first R5 arguments, which is more detailed than what you've got. First of all, the numbers that I put in there were only for the purpose of estimating really the difference in profit between R5 and R7. They weren't indicating overall profit, just for Ken. The gist out of that was that there'd be a 400 to 450K difference in profit between R5 and R7. So the R5 developer is going to tend to make about 4.5K, $400,000 more than the R7 developer. There's a lot of variables. This is a rough estimate, and also there's no $3.5 million of profit being made here, not even close. So, but anyway, over $1 million. Okay.
And that's $1 million with a lot of unknowns. I mean, we got engineering and we've got rock and we've got this. So I think the whole thing about us making this huge profit off of this is, I think that's a representation of the fears. Somebody else is going to make a profit and I'm not. And I understand that. But the issue is that I was in that same boat when the other developments were developed, and I tried to support those developers. I mean, we worked with Steinke to have a nice neighborhood. So.
No, because it's not really relevant to the annexation. I mean, it's fine that he did that, but it's really not relevant. Yeah. Well, I have to let them have their chance to talk about. They are an applicant.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to address your questions. I make notes the whole time, and he's saying that I shouldn't be addressing that. I'm a little confused too, I'll just admit. Can you give me some guidance here, or give us some guidance?
Bottom line is some of the points are valid. Safety, and I can't deliberate right now. You guys, this is a process. We have a public hearing going on right now, okay? This isn't, let's get the axe out and the torches and go. Let's do this process. So the process is the process. Jacob started.
Yeah, the focus is on the annexation and what it's going to be zoned upon annexation.
Well, that's not what she's talking about.
So, and this is why at the beginning I said we're not trying to develop the subdivision because that's a whole other ball game. But of course, once we have the zoning, then the subdivision will start to shake, and that'll be a whole other conversation. We certainly understand the concerns about access and stuff, but
so that's what.
Okay, so the council's going to make a decision.
So we have one more public hearing.
Yeah, and then
that has to happen, and then on our regular session agenda, or regular session, you will see on number 6, it says deliberate annexation, where we could possibly make a decision tonight. Or we could hold it over if we chose to.
And then once they make that decision, then there's an ordinance, which is the mechanism that makes it true. That is a decision subject to appeal. If unappealed, that decision becomes final. And then, okay, now we know what the zoning's going to be. So now we know what the platform is for development of the site.
Get an attorney.
It is through the Land Use Board of Appeals, which is a state body that specializes in land use matters.
So when the decision is made, whenever it is that something that would be posted?
More than
the important thing is that you signed in. If you signed in, you're entitled to a copy, or at least a notice that the decision's been made, assuming that the assessor's tax records are correct, of course, since that's what we use. So annexation and zoning, that is the focus of tonight.
We'd just like to ask if you have any questions. Anybody in the council?
No, I think we've got everything I needed to hear. Doug, looks like you're getting ready to
Lots
talk.
of information tonight, and yeah, very interesting to me. Sit through this.
And just personally, after the meeting, if anybody wanted to walk outside and talk with anything that's not for the city council, we're open to that. Okay? Thank you.
Do you have any questions of staff before you close the public hearing on this matter?
You guys will be here through deliberation, though, too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
I have one. Doesn't the fire district need to sign off on any kind of issues on development and roads before it's approved? Don't they need to sign off to make certain that their fire engines have egress and ingress and can turn around and do all of those things?
All development is subject to fire marshal review.
Interesting.
We coordinate with agencies.
Jacob?
Yeah.
Jacob,
Yep.
I'm going to close this hearing. This public hearing is closed. Okay, so you can stick around. We have one more public hearing. We are going to actually be swearing in 2 new officers, if you would like to stick around, and we will be deliberating on this after this public hearing. If you'd like to stick around, you're more than welcome to.
5-minute break.
So I'm guessing the zoning option discussion